Welcome to the Wide Lens podcast, where expanding your perspective on recent history is our mission. Listen to untold accounts from overlooked voices and see familiar stories in a whole new light. Ready to dive deeper? Let's begin.
Hey, folks, on this episode of the Wide Lens podcast, we're honored to have Melvin Perdue join us. From the sandlots of his youth to the championship diamonds across the globe, Melvin has built a career defined by versatility, grit, and a love for baseball that knows no borders. Over more than 14 seasons, he's played and coached in the U.S., Europe, and Australia, earning MVP honors, gold gloves, and the respect of teammates and fans from the Netherlands to Austria. But Melvin's journey isn't just about baseball. It's not. It's about adaptability, seizing opportunities, and saying yes to the unexpected. Like the time he stepped off the field and onto a Hollywood set to portray Ray Durham in the Oscar-nominated film Moneyball. Absolutely. That experience gave him a front row seat to the intersection of sports and storytelling, working alongside some of the biggest names in film while bringing authenticity to one of baseball's most celebrated underdog stories. Today, we'll explore the full arc of Melvin's path, the early sparks that lit his passion for the game, the lessons learned in the clubhouse around the world, and the behind-the-scenes moments from Moneyball that you've never heard before. So, welcome to the Wide Lens podcast, Melvin. It's great to have you on the show with us.
Hey, thank you, man. Happy to be here.
Love having you, Melvin. Okay, first and foremost, I got to do a shout out to my man, Nick Renault. Okay, so how are Melvin and I connected in the first place? I met this guy, Nick, back in August of this year near Bend, Oregon. We were staying at the same resort, and I bumped into him and his family. And of all places, the hot tub. I don't know about you, Melvin, but I get chatting with people in the hot tub, and I was talking to Nick. I found out that he played baseball at Oregon State, where I also attended and went to university. And while we were chatting, I talked to him a bit about the podcast. I know he's a listener. And he mentioned you, and he mentioned your fascinating story. So once again, a big shout out, a big thank you to Nick. If you're listening, Nick, thank you, my man. And also, folks, if you've got someone like Melvin in your life that you want to see on the Wide Lens, please give me a shout out and chat with me about it. We'll get them on. So first and foremost, Melvin, Nick, how the heck did you connect to this guy?
Yeah, me and Nick played ball together in Arizona. So I was playing for a pro development team that was based out of the Bay Area. And we were playing in a big tournament down in Arizona. And Nick was late acquisition. He was a stud pitcher, threw well into the 90s, good movement. And yeah, we picked him up. I met him down there and we just really hit it off because, I'm playing for that team, leadoff hitter, playing infield and outfield. And then when Nick wasn't pitching, he played a little infield here and there. And yeah, we just really hit it off and connected well. So we kind of stayed in contact over the years, as we both continued on with our baseball careers.
So Melvin, are you surprised knowing Nick like you do that he got to chatting with someone like me in a hot tub, or does that sound just like him?
No, that sounds like him. He's a very relatable and sociable guy. So yeah, no, it doesn't surprise me at all.
I love it. I love it. So tell us, Melvin, where the heck are you right now? Where are you? Where are you calling in from?
I'm currently in Vienna, Austria. All right. Beautiful, beautiful city. Freezing my tail off a little bit right now, but that's because I'm from California and I don't like snow at all, which is kind of ironic because I'm in Austria, but there you go. But yeah, no, I'm out here and as I recently retired from professional baseball, I am now the athletic director at the International Christian School of Vienna and also a national team coach for Austria in baseball. I'm the head baseball coach for the U15.
Melvin, you eating any of that famous Austrian food? Any Wiener Schnitzel or anything like that?
Yeah, I knew you were going to say Wiener Schnitzel. I think everybody's had that about 80 times by now. And so, yes, we have had the schnitzel and many varieties of it, but I try to diversify a little bit if I can, but yes. No, it's good. It's good when you eat it for the second, third, fourth, fifth time. After that, you're like, okay, maybe we'll mix it up a little bit.
How about getting out into the mountains? Have you had a chance to do that yet? Have you seen any of the Sound of Music sites? Anything like that?
Well, me and my wife definitely like to travel and explore a bit, not just in Austria, but in Europe. We've gotten to the mountains to snowboard a bit. Well, my wife snowboard, I more so fell down the hill. You never quite, you always think you're a great athlete until you cross something that you just don't do. And I definitely wasn't a great athlete in that moment. Kind of gets frustrating too, because you're like, why can't I do this? I'm like picking up snowballs and throwing it against a tree out of frustration. And my wife was just looking at me like, who did I marry? Not playing. But no, it was fun. It was fun. But yeah, we've definitely explored, all over Austria. Obviously we live in Vienna, but we've explored Salzburg and Innsbruck and everything in between. It's some beautiful, beautiful country.
Yeah, it sure is. Personally, the fact that you're not enjoying snowboarding too much, Melvin, makes me feel great because I'm a massive skier. I live here in close to Seattle. The ski season is starting up any day, and I'm excited to get up on my skis again and get out there. But I would say, get back out on that snowboard. That's just is it snowing in the hills there as well right now?
Oh, 100%. We got our first snow even here in Vienna yesterday. So it's definitely got a lot of fresh powder up there in the mountains. I haven't been up there to see it, but yeah, it's definitely there. So I'm sure a lot of people are having a great time.
Well, great. Well, final question about Austria before we start jumping into the real questions. Melvin, there's no chance you're going to yodel for us, is there? Zero chance?
No shot. No shot.
Okay. Okay.
I'm sorry. I wouldn't even know where to start, man.
That's fair. That's fair. I wouldn't want to do that either. So had to ask. Cool. Hey, so Melvin, let's go to the beginning. And I would love to hear a little bit about your start. So, how did your love for baseball, how did that really take root in your life? And alongside that, were there any defining childhood moments that you can remember around baseball?
Well, it kind of started because my mom kind of put me into it. My mom was all-star softball player growing up. She stopped at high school, but she was a stud back then. And like any parent, she's just like, okay, we're gonna get you doing something. So when I was about 7 years old, she took me to the ball field, and then yeah, about I guess when I was 8 years old, we started to realize that hey, we might be onto something here. But that was also during a time period where it was like little league baseball was still very strong. You didn't have all the travel teams and no disrespect to travel organizations, but this was the time period where everybody played in their community. So you just had this strong community base and you were playing with your friends, but you were still playing competitive baseball. And then if you made the all-star team, then that essentially became the travel team. And then you would spend the rest of the summer traveling, playing in the little in tournaments and things. So yeah, I think a defining moment was just when I just realized that this was maybe more so when I was in middle school. I started to realize that I can use baseball not just to hopefully excel in and play, collegiately and professionally, but I can also use it to be a positive influence wherever I went. So that's what I just kind of felt like God put that on my heart to, use this as a tool to, spread his goodness wherever I went and try to be that positive influence.
So, when you were a kid, what positions did you play? I know that when I was a boy and playing baseball, and I loved it too. I wasn't great at it like you were, but I still really enjoyed it. I played so many different positions, right?
Mhm.
Did they keep you in on a specific position when you were a kid, and did that stick, or did you move around a bit? What that look like for you?
Yeah, by the vast majority when I was in youth baseball, I was always on the infield somewhere, whether it was shortstop or third base, because I always had a pretty strong arm. There was one year where I played a little center field, but that was just because, to be honest, I had a coach that wasn't the greatest guy. That was actually a defining moment too. He wasn't the greatest guy. Everybody's had that coach back then. It's just I don't know if you want to say took it too seriously or just had anger issues, but that got us just screaming at 12, 11 and 12-year-olds like we're making $500,000 and things like that. And I was playing shortstop, and then it was a practice, and I just booted a ball, then hit another one harder, booted that, hit it even harder, hit it even harder at an 11-year-old because it was 11 and 12s and I was 11. He said, "You know what? Get out in center field." So and I had the ball out in center field, which I played it. I enjoyed being out there just tracking fly balls down, but with the exception of that, it was always typically on the infield until, pretty much until I got to be about 14 years old. Then I started playing a bit more center field on top of infield.
Gotcha. Yeah, I was outfield as well as infield as a kid, and and I remember when I was really little, I'd be way out in the outfield, and the balls would hardly ever even come to me sometimes, and I wouldn't stay there, but I'd be there from time to time. And I grew up in a pretty hot place, and so I just picked dandelions in the back. So
Yeah,
I don't know if you
for
remember
sure.
that kid who would pick dandelions, but I'd
Yeah.
from sometime, and then the ball would go rolling past me. I'm like, what?
Yeah, we all had that kid.
Yeah, I was that kid. I apologize. I apologize.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool. So where was that? Where were you? Where were you playing? Was that you
When
said that was in California?
No, no, I was born in California, but we left California when I was pretty young, shortly before I got into kindergarten. So that was actually in Alabama when I was playing Little League. So we stayed in Alabama for a little stint before we moved to Georgia.
Melvin, what was that like playing baseball as a kid in Alabama? I'm assuming it was incredibly hot. Is that not true?
Yeah, but I don't mind heat. Cold gets on my nerves. I can play in 130 and be perfectly fine. So the heat never really bothered me. No, it was cool.
Love it. That's great. Excellent. So, how about for you, Melvin? Were there any players? Were there any baseball heroes growing up that you looked up to? And how did they, if at all, how did they shape your style of play and maybe you as a player, maybe you as a man as well? Did anyone influence you, or did you look up to any players when you were a boy?
I mean, I would say influence is the better word. I mean, I would say Ken Griffey just because he had a lot of fun when he played the game. And as you get older and as you start to elevate to higher level teams, you can start to get the sense that it's getting more and more serious. Coaches get more serious, tournaments get more serious, and some kids it can quite easily lose your love and passion for the game through that seriousness. But I just love how, Ken Griffey, even to this day, he's like, let the kids play, had his hat backwards, which I know, especially back in that generation, coaches hated that. But for me, it was just enjoying the game, really enjoying the game. So I really liked the way he played. And from an infield perspective, I loved watching Ozzie Smith from The Wizard of Oz, from a defensive shortstop perspective, just how he did things. I definitely tried to mimic that as best as I can. I had no regard for my body, laying out for everything, trying to make those slick plays. Yeah, he definitely inspired me defensively.
You know what's fun about Griffey? So, like I shared at the beginning, I live just south of Seattle, and King Griffey, I think he grew up in Ohio, and he ended his career, or I know he played for the Reds, but he's famous as a Mariner. He got to play with his dad, of all people, in his first season. So, Ken Griffey Sr. And we just finished the World Series about a month ago. And there was a great ad where somebody, you don't know who it is playing Take Me Out to the Ball Game on the organ, and you see these fingers flying on the organ, and then at the very last moment the guy takes his hat and he flips it backwards, and then this huge grin pops up on his face. None other than
Mhm.
Ken Griffey Jr.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome.
So
I loved watching it. Yeah,
just
yeah.
like you're talking about taking that hat and flipping it, so he's still doing that. And I'm at T-Mobile Park a handful of times a year, and there are two statues outside, and one is for Edgar, And the other one, of course, is for King Griffey. And it's fun to talk to my kids about who he is and how he really shaped our team.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it just even besides his personality, just the way he played the game, like what he did defensively, his style, and his approach to hitting, even to this day. When I'm working with young hitters, I talk about that, like what he would talk about with gap to gap, driving through the ball, finding the holes. It's just, hard line drives become home runs, not just trying to just elevate everything like is the trend and the trend that many people teach to this day, but I just loved his approach and how he went about his business. Yeah.
Yeah. Would you say that he was a pretty teachable person?
I mean, when I watched him as a kid, I wasn't paying attention to all that, but as far as learning from his dad, absolutely, because everything he references from what his dad taught him and how his dad told him to approach the game. And yeah, so.
That's great, Melvin. Okay, so you said that you started off in California, swiftly moved to Alabama, and then got yourself into Georgia. So,
Mhm.
what would you call your hometown? So let's shout out your hometown. Where was it? And was there a bit of a culture of baseball in that hometown? And did that influence you in your early development at all?
Yeah, I guess I would say the hometown's gonna have to be Hampton, Georgia, because that's where I went to middle school or half middle school, and then that's where I went to high school. So that's the high school was Lovejoy High School. So the baseball culture when I got there, I would say was decent. It was solid. I mean, yeah, the bigger culture by far is football. I mean, we've had who knows how many, even in my graduating class, we had two NFL guys. And I
Who were
played
they?
with
Who were they?
Tashard Choice played for the Cowboys, running back for the Cowboys and Bills. And then Michael Hurd played for the Chiefs. You had Keith Fitzhugh, who was younger than us. He wound up playing for the Jets and the Ravens. We had, I think Mario Fannin played for the Broncos, I want to say. I feel like I'm missing somebody else too, but we had an absolute studded high school football team. And baseball, we were solid. I know we went to the state playoffs when I was a ninth grader. 10 through 12, we were average, somewhere middle of the road. We changed coaches going into my senior year, but the coach my freshman through junior year, awesome guy. Awesome guy. Nothing against the guy in the senior year, but junior year, awesome guy. He just had a great ability to really understand his players and read his players and understand how to coach them. And that's why he was very successful there. He also was a bit old school, like we couldn't touch the infield grass. Don't you run across that grass? So the field was in pristine condition. And yeah, no, he was a good dude.
That's great. So, Melvin, how about for you? When did that light bulb come on for you? And what did it look like when you first realized that baseball could be something more than just a game, more than just a pastime, and that you could actually make a career out of it? When did that light bulb turn on and you realized, hey, I've got a special God-given talent here, and I might be able to parlay this into something a bit bigger than the Sandlot?
Yeah, I would say probably college where that hit. I mean, high school did pretty well, and then up to my senior year. The senior year was a bit, I don't like to use the term slump, but it wasn't the best season for me, mainly because I just didn't, and I don't like to make excuses, so I'm going to still put the blame on me. But the new coach that came in, yeah, we just didn't gel like the former coach. He more so had a coaching style of one size fits all. I'm gonna coach everybody the same. And yeah, we just had a bit more difficulties. So, but even with those difficulties, I still earned a scholarship, and so I still had ambition to play college baseball, and was still, despite having some struggles senior year, kind of feeling like the coach was never really for me. I still was able to persevere, overcome, continue to work hard, and earn a scholarship which was on my accord. It was just based on the work that I put in and these coaches seeing me, not necessarily him calling somebody for me or anything like that. But it wasn't pretty much until halfway through college, I would say maybe after my junior season, where I started to realize, like, you can hit, you can play this game. I mean, I still had some work to clean up defensively, but no one could doubt that I could hit the baseball. And I just kind of had a fire in me to kind of keep going with it. And that I felt that I could really, by the grace of God, go somewhere with it.
Where was that? Where did you take off when you went from high school? And as you described, for you specifically, maybe that lackluster senior year, which is a disappointment because you're like, man, I'm, physically stronger than I've ever been. I'm more confident than I've ever been. So I understand how that can be a real struggle a senior year. I've got friends who have played professional baseball, and they were some of the most unlikely players in high school to ever be drafted. And they just bloomed late, or they hit their stride late. And so sometimes, like as a senior, we could feel like, man, this just isn't working for me. But of course, things turned out differently for you, which is phenomenal. But where did you land? What college did you go to?
I started at Shorter College, which is now, I think, Shorter University. At the time, they were NAIA, so I received a scholarship from them. After my junior year, Alabama State University came calling the coach, asking about me, but I winded up going to Shorter. And then from Shorter, I transferred up to New England, winded up graduating from St. Anselm, which is a D2 school just north of Boston. So I played football and baseball for them. And then baseball stuck as the professional sport.
You dual sported like Bo Jackson.
Yeah. I was a dual sport athlete. Yeah.
What did you do on the football field?
Defensive back. Yeah.
Did that frustrate your baseball coach and or vice versa with the football coach, or because it was D2, they understood that and that was maybe something a bit more common amongst student athletes?
No, it wasn't common. I mean, let me think. There might have been two other athletes, but it was still a strong Division II conference because it was in New England. And New England at the time, if I remember correctly, they only had UMass and Boston College that were football championship. So, FBS, or excuse me, football bowl series. So basically the FBS. And then they had a couple more that were FCS. So you had the University of New Hampshire, University of Maine, the Ivies. But long story short, they didn't have like a lot of Division I football programs. So there's Division I football programs now that used to be in our conference, like Bryant, for example, out of Rhode Island. They used to be in our conference. And Merrimack used to be in our conference. UMass Lowell used to be in our conference. So there's Division I programs and Division I programs now that used to be in our conference. So it was a strong conference despite being Division II. But it's not like it was still very common to have dual sport athletes. You had a couple, like our quarterback for the football team was also a pitcher on the baseball team. And we had one other running back who also played baseball. He was an outfielder of the baseball team, but it still wasn't common because even at Division II, it's still a full-time job. You're still there all day, every day except Sunday, watching film, weightlifting, multiple practices, et cetera, et cetera. But no, the coaches were receptive. At least I never experienced any friction between the two teams.
So you said that was like up in northern Massachusetts, is that right?
It was in southern New Hampshire, Manchester.
Okay, you were in New Hampshire. Got it.
Yeah, but Manchester is literally like, I want to say no more than 25 or 30 minutes from the border to Massachusetts. So you can with no traffic, you can get to Boston in 45 minutes, 50 minutes tops.
Did you hit any of the ski resorts there while you were there, or did you wait till you got over to Austria?
I knew nothing about skiing until I hit Austria or snowboarding and had no desire to know about it. When the snow came, I went into hibernation.
I kind of like it, though. I like it, Melvin, how you have ended up in Austria in your time in New England quasi prepared you for that, because that is some cold weather.
100%. Yes. Like it snowed even more there than it did here from what I've experienced so far. So, yeah, you never quite understand it until you walk out of the gym. So, there's one time I walked in the gym, no snow on the ground, and I was driving like a Honda Civic. I come out, my car is covered with a foot of snow in a matter of 2 hours, maybe. And then here's this Georgia boy with a little picker thing trying to shovel out a Honda Civic in a foot of snow, clearly not knowing what I'm doing. It was interesting.
That's great. Did you get to go back home to Georgia during like Christmas time and be back with your family again, or were you pretty
Yeah,
much embedded in New England culture?
no, absolutely not. I always went home on the breaks as best as I could. During that time frame, there was a airline that I think Southwest bought out years later, but they used to be called AirTran. And AirTran used to have this amazing deal for college students where college students could get flights and be on standby for like 60 to $70. And then the key is you had to be on standby, and if they had a seat for you, then you could jump on the flight. So I used to always take AirTran home because they flew directly into Atlanta. So that was a phenomenal thing at the time to provide college students.
So what did you study there? What were you focused?
My BA was in criminal justice, and I had a graduate certificate in forensic science.
What was that all about? Why did you that's really specific. I always think of, and Melvin, I'm not trying to sound rude here if I am, but I always think of athletes doing like sports science, right? I always think of that. And you have something that's very different to the sporting world that you're focusing in on during your academic element. What's that all about? Why that?
Yeah, it's not really an interesting story, I guess, but the criminal justice component was I wanted to understand criminal justice. I wanted to understand law so that I can utilize that to help kids in need, help kids in rough communities in need so they can know the law to protect themselves and things like that, whether that was through social work, whether that was through being a parole officer, whatever, something in that capacity. The forensic science component, to be perfectly honest with you, I just felt like the criminal justice aspect or degree by itself, since it was so broad, it might not hold as much weight. So I kind of did the forensic science component just to show how smart I am. But I had no desire to be CSI Miami or anything like that. It was just like, I kind of need something on top of this. So, okay, we'll do a graduate certificate in forensic science and play one more year of baseball.
I love it. You're like really well-rounded in cockiness, Melvin. I like that. I love it.
I was
I
just
love it.
trying.
I
Yeah,
love
I
it.
was just I was just trying to. Okay, this might not hold enough weight. Let's do this so we can buff up the degree a little bit.
Did you find yourself like engaging in areas of New England where there were kids disadvantaged and speaking into their lives as well while you were there? Or did that typically happen back home when you were in Georgia?
Yeah, no, I did internships at the local middle school where I was working with kids that were, in the special education area or kids that were dealing with disciplinary issues. I would do some internships there and just try to, be a positive influence in the classroom setting. So yeah, I did a little bit of that.
That's great. Well, we really appreciate you for doing that. It's important stuff.
Mhm.
Okay, so Melvin, what did that look like? You're playing football, you're playing baseball at the collegiate level. What did that leap look like for you from college ball to a professional opportunity? What did that look like?
I mean, it's obviously a big jump because now you're dealing with a situation where everybody around you can play the game. Not to say that people in college can't, but there's just a larger gap between the elite players and say the average college player where that gap is definitely closed more at the professional ranks. So it just kind of comes down to not just excelling in the game physically, but your mental strength and being mentally tough. That's where you start seeing those noticeable differences. What kind of guys can go 0 for 4 and then come back like it never happened, as opposed to the guys where 0 for 4 becomes 0 for 30 because it's in their heads. Or, same on the pitching side, might have a rough outing who can come back and shut the door the next time, as opposed to one rough outing becomes 5 rough outings. Like, I played alongside guys who had like great stuff as a pitcher, great stuff, but they just struggled, and, you know, mentally it just kind of took them out of it, and they didn't wind up getting signed or their contracts renewed. So yeah, it just kind of tightens the talent pool up a bit.
Yeah, I bet that as you progress further and further into more elite leagues as well, you find that your uniqueness becomes more and more common as you
Mhm.
get around folks that are incredibly talented in the sport.
Yeah, 100%.
So, what was your first professional contract like? What did that look like? Where did you sign? Where did you head off to?
The United League, which is now defunct because, as you know, many independent leagues. I mean, you have independent leagues that are super stable for years, like the Atlantic League, the American Association, and things like that. So that league has been long gone. But at the time, it was United League in Laredo, Texas, the Laredo Broncos. Yeah.
And so tell us a little bit more about that. That is not affiliated with Major League Baseball. That's not like a minor league team.
No, no. Independent baseball is professional. You're getting paid, but it's what it says is independent. So, essentially, any affiliated team could utilize that as a way to pick up players that, whether they were missed, whether they were, yeah, maybe they got released from affiliated ball, then they went to independent ball, started playing well, and then they get re-signed. So any affiliation could come after guys in the independent ranks.
So was it a bit like, not disparaging it at all, but is it a bit like kind of purgatory for baseball where guys are like playing, hoping that they're going to be noticed so they can get into a minor league team at some point?
I think it depends on the player. Some players, it's just about, for me at the time, I was just getting started because I had just graduated college pretty much. But for other players, it could be just trying to stay in the game, trying to play professional ball as long as they can. Other players, it's about trying to advance and hopefully putting up good enough numbers to be seen by an affiliated club. So it just really depends on the player
Gotcha.
and what their
That's
what their ultimate goals are. Trying to
so.
prolong going into the workforce as long as possible.
So what did that look like for you, Melvin? You basically found yourself, you said, in Texas.
Yeah.
And what other types of teams were you playing when you were in that independent league?
Well, they were only teams based out of Texas, so in that kind of general region, it was a lower level independent league, but it was a for me, I felt like it would be a good starting point to be in the professional ranks, see what professional baseball was like, compete against, you know, other professional athletes and use it as a stepping stone to hopefully advance somewhere else. So, I mean, yeah, it was fine.
So I personally know folks who played minor league ball, and I know, Melvin, that their experience that they share with me is it can be super brutal. And what I mean by that is, and that's like, just, minor league teams, is that they get paid very poorly. A
Mhm.
lot of them would be like living in host families just to make ends meet. Did the independent league look like that as well, where they would love to probably pay you guys a lot more and have a great situation for you, but the market dictates what the market dictates? What was that like from a financial perspective?
Yeah, you're absolutely correct, especially when you get to the independent leagues. Like, I mean, again, when you talk about the more elite independent leagues like the Atlantic League and American Association, those top tier leagues, it's a little bit different. I mean, you're still not making millions or either even hundreds of thousands, but you can argue you're making enough to survive, especially if they're covering your living expenses. But when you get to the lower independent leagues, yeah, you might be making a couple hundred. I remember one player, we had a good infielder, and he actually got traded to Laredo. and he left after maybe a week because he said he could. His exact words was, I can't live and perform like this," because we were getting like vouchers to, I don't know what it was, Sonic or something like that, and that was our dinner. So like basically fast food vouchers to go eat at a fast food restaurant. So yeah, when you're at that level, it is definitely a grind, but you kinda most people kinda know that going in. And like you said, it's just an opportunity to get started in the professional ranks. And if you do what you're supposed to do and put up numbers, you hope to get better opportunities. But no, it's absolutely a grind. Some people think about it as, oh yeah, the glamour of playing professional baseball, but like no two leagues are created equal. You have what everybody knows, Major League Baseball or the Nippon Professional League in Japan and leagues like that, where yeah, you can make, generational wealth. But any other leagues, it's a grind. You're not getting rich. You're just trying to elevate. So yeah, and that's one thing I
So
think with. I'm sorry.
yeah, go for it.
No, I think that's one thing that was what caught my eye very quickly after my first year abroad, when it was just like, this is actually better than many other leagues in many ways. Like maybe not necessarily the same level of talent across the board, but they pay you and treat you a lot better than many of these other lower level minor league teams would. So, which is why I kind of never went back.
So how that was going to be my next question, Melvin. What brought you from the U.S. to taking your career internationally?
I got an opportunity from a club in the Netherlands. Mhm. It was it was interesting because of course I knew about baseball in the Netherlands to a degree. I had never been outside of America, but if there was a country that you knew about when it came to baseball, it was the Netherlands outside of Japan, simply because they had won the World Baseball Cup in 2007, I want to say is when they won it. And everyone knew that the Dutch league was the league in Europe. So when the Netherlands offered a contract, it was kind of difficult. It was a difficult decision. I definitely had to pray a lot on it to try to figure it out because I did have the opportunity to continue playing independent ball stateside. But then I just kind of thought, why not? If nothing else, I'll go over there, hopefully be God's light to a new culture, new community, play a little baseball abroad. And if it doesn't work out, hey, come back home and just keep doing what I'm doing. So yeah, I took the leap.
Why why the Netherlands? Did you know that that was, I think it's called the Hoofdklasse, something like that? I'm probably
Hoofdklasse.
okay. Yeah. So how did you find out about that league? I know that you said that they were known on the world stage. Did you just know that that was, if you were going to play in Europe, that was the country to be in?
Yeah, correct. So just did a little research, and it didn't take long to figure out. We did a little research what the top baseball country in Europe was. The Hoofdklasse was considered to be the professional league in Europe, and then obviously Italy was a close second. It was basically a league where everybody got paid, even Dutch guys, or at least you were supposed to be getting paid, same as Italy. And that was pretty much the only two leagues that did that. Many of the other countries, some players might get paid, maybe the better players, the elite players, and the import players, but not everybody got paid. So yeah, it was like basically when you did your research, you pretty much realized pretty quickly that that was the league to be in if you were going to be in Europe.
Were you living in Amsterdam or were you in a neighboring city?
No, I was in Oss. So Oss is basically right smack back in the middle of the country, pretty much. They technically consider it the South, but I felt like it was a middle point because you can get to Amsterdam in an hour, you can get to Rotterdam in 50 minutes, you can get to Utrecht in 45 minutes, you can get to Den Bosch in 20 minutes, you get to Eindhoven, all these major cities in 30 minutes. So it kind of sat right in the middle.
Did you ever find yourself in East Friesland, in Friesland in Holland? Did you ever go to the east side of the country in like
East
Groningen, that
side.
area?
Yes, but not Groningen necessarily, but Enschede and, areas like that right before you hit the German border. Yeah, I've been over there a lot, but not really up near Groningen.
Well, I lived in that area myself for about a year. I was an exchange student in what they call Ostfriesland, which
Okay.
if you're there, it's German, but this is kind of like the problem of Germany during World War II. Like, where are the borders? Folks didn't really quite know where they were. There was arguments over them. So this is Germany, but you open your eyes to where I was living in Germany, and there were dikes and windmills and white and blue
Mhm.
colors everywhere. So for me, it
Yeah.
looked just like I was living in Holland, but it definitely was. It was a part of Germany, and it was German. But I made my way over to Holland quite a bit, and it's interesting, and you probably know this too, Melvin, living in a German speaking country right now. A lot of folks give a lot of guff to the Germans for having a real guttural language. But it's not
Mhm.
until you've actually lived in Holland that you realize, holy smokes, that's the real guttural, real wrong Germanic language. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, but I guess it depends on what side of the line you're on, because the Dutch might say the same thing about Germany. They feel like their language is chill, and the German
Uh,
language is messed up. So it just depends. I spend so much time in the Netherlands. I actually understand Dutch a bit better than German.
do you?
Uh, yeah, so because especially now being in Vienna and being in a school that's English speaking, you're still surrounded by English speakers. So the only time we're
Right.
encountering German is if we're out in the public trying to get through the grocery store or something like that. But in the Netherlands, I was more immersed in it, if you will.
Well, I got to tell you, you're really blessed. You're really blessed, Melvin, for being in Austria to learn German if you want to, because I lived in the north and they're very famous for speaking German very fast.
Hmm.
And the further south you go, the slower it gets. And in Austria, it's kind of sing-songy and super slow. So if I'm in Austria and I'm hearing German spoken as a non-German foreign speaker that can speak German, it's a lot easier for me. So you're in a place that's great. But then I mean you're right next to Switzerland and they have their own dialect of German that I don't even get. I can't really even understand it that much.
Well, yeah, but even in Austria, depending on what region you're in, you're going to find different dialects. And that's what's so difficult about German is there's so many different dialects that it's funny. English, we have people from England here at this school. We have people from South Africa here at this school, even though they have strong accents and they have certain words here and there that mean something a little bit different to us. For example, the light on your phone, they'll call it a torch, things like that, but you still can understand what they're saying. But in German, and Austrians have told me this, if they go out to Tyrol, or maybe if they go out to, I don't know, Carinthia or something, they might not be able to understand what they're saying at all because the dialects are so different. So it's a very interesting and unique language for sure.
That's wild. That's cool. So getting back to baseball a little bit, you're in Holland, you're playing for the Hoofdklasse. How did that play really differ compared to what you're used to back in the US? Because I'm assuming the reason why these guys are even playing baseball in the first place is a lot of the American soldiers probably brought it during the wars to Europe, and the folks that were living there started playing it as well and started building out baseball through that because it is an American sport, right? And so how did that Dutch style differ compared to the US?
I mean, honestly, they have guys out there that can play. I mean, I would say the biggest difference is the velocity adjustment because in America, you would see a lot higher velocity more frequently. But in the Netherlands, when I went there originally, I could probably count definitely no more than two hands. But on one hand, the amount of guys that threw 90 plus. So not to say that their pitchers weren't effective because arguably the toughest pitcher I've ever personally faced, whether it's America or Europe, is a guy that tops out at 88, but everything moved 2 feet, it felt like. And he's on the Dutch national team. He's been on their World Baseball Classic team. So yeah, he didn't throw hard, but everything freaking moved. And then he had a changeup or a splitter, still can't remember what it was, and it would just fall out of the sky. So he had something that went right, he had something that went left, and he had something that dropped out of the sky. And he was very, very tough to hit. Like, I think my last year in Dutch Hoofdklasse, I think I only struck out maybe 12 times the entire season, and he accounted for 6 of them.
How many games did you guys play, Melvin, every year?
I think their season's roughly 60, I want to say. So
Okay.
it's not like 162 game seasons like America. They also, one of the first jokes I heard from them baseball related that was kind of funny, they were like, when I started asking them about the schedule my first year there, and they were like, no, we don't play every day. We actually like our players to get home to their families. So the Dutch Hoofdklasse only plays 3 games a week. They typically played on Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday is when they typically play.
Were you married at that point, or were you a single guy living in a home?
I had a girlfriend. I wasn't married. Me and my wife didn't meet until way later, 2018. So wasn't married. Dated a Dutch girl for a couple of years, but yeah, that was about it.
So you are in the Netherlands, and then you move over to the Austrian Bundesliga, right? Is that right? And
Yeah.
how did that move happen, Melvin? What did that look like? That's a shift across the continent.
Yeah, no, I met connected with the CEO of Baseball Jobs Overseas. So Baseball Jobs Overseas is an organization that helps baseball players find baseball jobs overseas. And it's growing. They've definitely grown now, and they've had at least well over 1,000 or helped 1,000 players sign contracts, whether it's in Europe or Australia or maybe parts of Asia. This is in their earlier phases, but the guy from Baseball Jobs Overseas, David Burns, he wanted to do an interview with me because he was interested about baseball in the Netherlands, because baseball in the Netherlands is typically the hardest league to break into. Germany signs a lot of Americans. The Czech Republic signs a lot of Americans. Netherlands and Italy is very, very tough because they already have players that can play the game very well. So they never really felt the need to import guys as much, especially not position players. If they were importing anybody, typically it was pitchers, unless it was an absolute stud hitter. So he was very curious to know about my journey to the Netherlands and how I broke in and this, that, and the other. And then when we were finishing with that interview, he was kind of like, well, hey, if you're interested, just so you know, we're looking for an import down here in Austria. So you interested? And at the time, I had been in the Netherlands that was season number 4. So I was just kind of like, maybe it's not a bad idea to just go try another country. Why not? Just to go experience something new. So I wound up signing with that team for 2015 and experienced the Austrian Bundesliga.
And I see on your hat it says the big A for Austria, but Austria technically starts with an O. Do they just do it all in English for the Bundesliga, or is it Österreich in Austria?
No, they do Austria because they play an international tournament. So internationally, the country's known as Austria. So all the national team stuff and everything still has the A and has Austria on it.
And so when you were there, Melvin, you got to play in the Austrian Bundesliga Championship. That's like the World Series equivalent for Austria. And what was that like? What team were you guys playing? And how many games are in that series? What's it like to go through the playoffs to get into that? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so that would have been later because I played for the Netherlands. I played in the Netherlands for 4 years, played in Austria in 2015, went to Australia, went back to the Netherlands, and then eventually, after COVID, migrated back to to Austria, where I'm currently living. But yeah, the baseball series, the championship series is 5 games. We were playing the Metro Stars, so they're kind of like the Austrian Bundesliga version of the New York Yankees. I think they've won like 15 championships in their history. So they traditionally have been the team. So I was playing for the Wiener Neustadt Diving Ducks, and that's where I ended my career. And we essentially became the new kids on the block, winning, I think now it's 4 championships in 5 years. So, but it was a very good vibe. I'm not gonna lie, even though it's Austria, and especially in that community, because the club that I was playing for, their baseball club is in a kind of smaller town. It's not a super small town, but it's a kind of smaller town that doesn't have a lot of clubs. So everybody comes out and supports the big Bundesliga club. When you're playing in Vienna, it's Vienna. There's hundreds of clubs with many different sports, right? So they don't necessarily get that same kind of support, but oh, they had that stadium rocking. We have what's an equivalent to a college level stadium, I would say, like good college level stadium, and people packed it out for the playoffs. It was a very, very good vibe. Probably one of the best I've actually been a part of in my career.
So you had when you were playing for that team, did you have yourself, Melvin? Did you have a song that you would walk in on?
Yeah, I always like to play. Well, are you talking about the final year, or are you talking about the years leading up to that? Because I had
What was your
multiple songs. I changed it every year.
yeah, what was your go-to?
One year I had Armies by KB. These are all Christian artists. I had Lecrae one year, Hold Up Wait. And then the last year I had KB Glory to Glory. So I always hit them with the Christian hip hop a little bit, just to, remind myself who I'm playing for, and also let the world know a little bit who I'm playing for. But there's still songs that make you bob your head a little bit. There's still good tunes, but they also have an actual message behind them. So that's what I used to roll with.
It's pretty amazing. Suarez on the Mariners, he walks out to worship music, Christian worship music.
Yeah.
And so it's not even guised as like Christian music. It's like a worship song that he walks out to. And every time I see him do that, I think there's a great testimony right there.
Yeah, it's perspective, 100%.
I know I got a young guy from our church, and he asked me, he said, "Hey, what kind of walkout song should I have?" And I said to him, I think you should do, so these are, full on secular songs, but I said, like, you got to do something like Thunderstruck by AC/DC. That's like a full on like baseball song. You always hear that one, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
the other one, which is kind of like Northwest roots, is Nirvana Smells Like Teen Spirit. And he goes, "Brad, why should I walk out to these songs? Like, I don't even like these songs." And I said to him, I go, "You gotta walk out to a song that the entire crowd is excited about, because
Mhm.
all of those opponents, when they hear you walking out to a song that they love, they're not gonna help but be able to root for you as well." And he loved that. He didn't
Yeah.
he didn't follow my advice in the end. He chose I think some country song or something like that. But I know if I was a player at a competitive level like that, I'd play something that can get the whole crowd, rallying behind me, regardless if I was on their team or not.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I remember I've always done that since high school. All through college, my walk-up song was "Lord Give Me a Sign" by DMX. But then in college, we had multiple. We could pick, I think, up to 3 songs, and they just rotated them through every at bat. So people used to always say, when you come up to bat, it's the only time when we can actually dance, because everybody else is playing country songs or some other random song. Like one of our pitchers even had "Smooth Operator" by Sade.
That's
Which
a
is like,
great song.
it's a great
That's a
song, but you definitely don't think about it when you're playing baseball. But it was
coast to
good.
coast and west to
Yeah,
Chicago. Yeah.
and he was like the closer. It was like, didn't give you closer vibes, but it worked for him. So
Smooth operator.
yeah, 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 yeah. He was like a crafty lefty, so I think that's what he was going for.
Does sound like a smooth operator.
Mhm.
So you kind of hinted at the fact that you were in Australia for a bit too. So g'day,
Mhm.
mate. That's a little bit. That's a little bit of a left hook there. What brought you down there? And they've got different seasons altogether, because they're on the other side of the other bottom side of the planet. Were you
Yep.
able to kind of play for Austria and then go play for Australia and then back up into Europe? What did that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So I signed a contract to play winter ball down there. So as you alluded to, their winter is our summer and vice versa. So yeah, after the Austrian season, I had a great year, was an all-star, hit like 450 or something like that. I got a contract to go down there, and I was based out of Perth. And yeah, it was winter ball, phenomenal time. Like I could actually live in Perth, Australia if it wasn't a 30-hour flight to get there. Like you do not understand how far Australia is until you actually take that flight. Like a map doesn't know justice. It is out there. Like it took me, I think I flew, oh goodness gracious, what felt like 17 hours to like Bangkok or something. I don't know. Then I had the longest layover in my life, and it was still like another 6 hours or 7 hours down. It was absolute shenanigans. Like, but no, it was a great time.
Is baseball pretty popular in Australia as well?
Yeah, and it's definitely getting bigger. I think that I don't know where they're ranked right now, but they're at least top 15. 'Cause, they competed in the World Baseball Classic as well, and they're starting to get a bit more representation in Major League Baseball and the minor league affiliates. So yeah, it was definitely a good level of baseball. I mean, first of all, because it's winter ball, every team had imports and guys coming in that was throwing well, but even the Australian nationals could play the game. So yeah.
Yeah, they're famous in Australia for getting pretty good at basketball as well. You've got some famous names coming out of Australia for basketball. So Australia is like the biggest island or smallest continent, however way you want to look at it, on the planet. Did that mean that they would fly you around from city to city because it was just too far to get to those other places?
Well, normally, yeah, if you're playing in the ABL, they would fly you coast to coast based on where you're playing. I was playing in the state league, so that's like their highest level club league, if you will. Unfortunately, my club specifically, some clubs would allow their import players to play for the ABL team. My club did not. So that was in our contract that we couldn't play for the Perth Heat. I think basically the reasoning was we brought you here for us. We don't want you hurt playing for the Heat. So you're only going to be playing with us. But no, the level was still very solid and definitely had a great time out there.
No, I totally get that. I've got a friend who was a collegiate swimmer in Central Washington University in Ellensburg, and he loves skiing. And there's this great place called White Pass. It's one of my favorite places to ski that's close by. And so I said to him, "Hey, when you were out in Ellensburg, did you ski at White Pass a ton?" And he said, "My coach wouldn't let us because we could get injured skiing. So we were totally banned from that." So I totally get
Yeah.
how when folks own you like that, they don't want you to be risking yourself like that. I get that.
Yeah, 100%.
So, Melvin, have you ever seen the film Dumb and Dumber? You seen that before?
Of course.
Okay, good. Well, there's a great line. You probably know where I'm going with this, but I think it's really cool how you were in Austria and you went to Australia because there's this young lady that Jim Carrey, he asked her, "Where are you from?" And she says, "Austria," right? And then he answers back with, "Well, g'day, mate. Let's put another shrimp
Yeah.
on the barbie." So
Yeah.
it's kind of cool how you were in those two, confusing places for a lot of folks, geographically
Yeah.
speaking, Austria, Australia. Got to spend time in both those places. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Couldn't be more different countries from the
For sure.
weather to the vibes to yeah, it's polar opposite in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Okay, let's switch over to Moneyball.
Mm,
My wife is from the United Kingdom and
okay.
she's from Wales. She is not, I would say, a baseball fan. She did not grow up with it. She likes rugby. That's what they love in Wales. She loves
Yep.
rugby. But she'll go to baseball games with me. But like a lot of fans, she's just chatting with me the entire time. She's watching the game maybe 10% of the time. But the reason I bring her up is because she loved the movie Moneyball.
Okay.
And I think what's wild about the movie Moneyball is if you're not into baseball that much, you're gonna love this movie. And if
Mhm.
you're into baseball a lot, you're going to love this movie because there is a lot of baseball depth in it, but also it's just really a story about people and a story about the status quo and a story about thinking differently, right? And so
Mhm.
my wife, like, I know she loves it because I'm a guy, which means if I like a movie, I'll watch it like 8 or 9 times. And I've seen Moneyball. I've probably seen it 4 times now. I love it. And my
Yeah.
wife has seen it twice with me, and that says a lot that she's able to actually watch it twice. So it's a
That's
great
awesome.
film. It's
Oh,
so
yeah,
good.
100%. But I'm biased,
So
so
yeah, you are biased. You should be biased, Melvin. So what's up with Moneyball? Like, how the heck did you hear about the opportunity to be a part of this film? Where did that come from?
It was a blessing, man. I don't know how else to say it. It's like I was just coming back from Laredo. Actually, I heard about the opportunity while I was still in Laredo, and the casting director found out about me through another baseball player. So he connected with me, the guy that was casting for the movie, because a friend of mine who was a baseball player, he had already signed on to be Carlos Beltran in the film, and they were still looking for a Miguel Tejada and a Ray Durham. So the casting director reached out and then he invited me to the very last audition, if you will, which took place at USC's baseball stadium in Southern California. So pretty much everyone else there, as far as I know, they had to go through like 4 levels. They had to go through an initial baseball tryout to make sure you could even hit a ball. Then they had to read lines and they had to go through something else and they had to read more lines. And then the final stage, I think it was like 150 of us. We were there at USC Stadium and they wanted us to hit, they wanted us to field, they wanted to know our baseball background, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I got invited to that final session and got signed that day. Originally, I was going for Miguel Tejada. They wanted me going from Miguel Tejada, but then Royce Clayton, what a 16-year major league shortstop, he was there as a consultant, just consulting on the movie. And he was at shortstop fielding ground balls with us. And then the director had an idea. He was like, "Hey, he should be in the movie." So he somehow became Miguel Tejada, and then I became Ray Durham, and I got signed that day to be on the movie.
What were your acting chops like, and what did that process look like? And how were you even capable? I mean, you're already this talented baseball player, so that's in the bag. That's not a problem at all. But what about being able to be an actor stage, like in a film? How were you able to pull that off?
I mean, most of it was just playing baseball with a camera on you, so I didn't have to think about that part too much. It wasn't until I had one scene that got snipped up a bit in the movie. It was still in the movie, but it was me and Jonah Hill, and he was talking about my hitting. That was actually a longer scene, and they didn't even give me lines. They like almost created that scene, and I think it was just kind of like the director. This is my what I felt at the time because I was just always present. I was doing my work, minding my business, and I think me and the director kind of developed a bit of a relationship, and then they needed to have a couple extra scenes for the movie. So they needed a baseball player for that particular scene. And he was just like, let's get Melvin to do that one. So, but in the scene, I had to basically ad lib. They didn't give me lines. They were just like, okay, we're going to record this scene, Melvin. You're going to be in the weight room lifting weights. Jonah Hill's going to come in and talk to you about your hitting and just talk or answer the questions as you would in real life. I'm like, okay. So then he's just talking to me about the different statistical numbers, like, this is what you're batting when you're 1-0 in the count, but see, when you don't get your pitch, when you're 1-2, this is what's happening. And then I had to kind of ad lib off of that. And, yeah, it was I was a little nervous because you got all these $1 million cameras on you and people are yelling shit in front of you and all this kind of stuff. But I think I wore it well, and I just kinda just went with the flow and just kinda pretended I was Ray Durham and said whatever I thought Ray would say in that situation.
Did you have to do quite a few takes or was it pretty quick?
Nah, mine was pretty quick. I think we did 3 takes at the most, you know? Just be a gamer, man. Be a gamer. Okay, let's
Be a
go.
gamer. Melvin, did you already know the concept of Moneyball pretty solid before being casted in the film? Did you know who Bobby Bean was and all this analytics and statistics and a way to look at the game differently? What's the saying again throughout the film? Get on base, something like that. What is it?
Yeah. Well, you're trying to buy runs,
Yeah.
and you buy runs by getting people on base, but didn't have a clue. Never heard. I wasn't an A's fan. I grew up a Braves fan because I went to middle school and high school in Atlanta. I just knew it was a baseball movie. I did know who Ray Durham was because I followed his career a bit growing up just because I learned pretty quickly I wasn't going to be 6'2". So I kind of paid attention to the Major League Baseball players that were a bit on the smaller side so I can learn about how they went about their business, how they found success despite not being huge or these prototypical players, if you will. So so yeah, I knew about Ray Durham. I knew about his background and everything, but I had no clue about the movie other than it was a baseball movie and they needed a Ray Durham and a Miguel Tejada.
So an interesting connection with Bobby Bean is, of course, this is all happening in Oakland, which is now Sacramento, which is going to be Las Vegas. So these are the A's. And he basically gets, if you watch the film at the end, he basically gets courted for the Red Sox. And the Red Sox, he decides no, but the Red Sox use his philosophy. They
Hmm.
break the curse of the Bambino and they win the World Series a couple times right after this. And I've got a question for you, Melvin. Did you know that your team, the Atlanta Braves, one of the oldest teams in baseball, because they actually are from Boston originally? They're the Boston
Hmm.
Braves,
Hmm.
and they made their way to Atlanta as they moved over there. So is that something that you knew about?
Yeah, I didn't know they were once the Boston Braves. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know a bit about my baseball history. I'm not a historian like some people, but yeah, I knew that. And they were also the
So
Milwaukee Braves.
you're kidding. And the Milwaukee Brewers, I don't know if you know this, they were the Seattle Pilots.
Yeah.
They were the Pilots for like one season, and then they left. And the city of Seattle sued Major League Baseball. And then about 7 or 8 years later, we got the Mariners. So we had Major League Baseball, I think, in the late 60s in Seattle for 1 year.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, we were kind of looking forward to seeing a World Series of the Mariners versus the Mariners, i.e., the Mariners versus the Milwaukee Brewers. And that's why if you look at the Milwaukee Brewers, they got the same old school colors as the Mariners because we kept those colors too. So blue and yellow.
Okay, didn't know that.
Okay. So Melvin, what's it like? What were your first thoughts walking onto that major film set for the first time? Was it pretty surreal?
I would say from the perspective of being able to not only walk on, but practice on and play on a Major League Baseball field too, actually. That was that was crazy. So when we filmed in Sony Studios, when we did certain scenes like the locker room scenes and things like that, I mean, yeah, it was cool, walking around Sony Studios, seeing different actors, well-known actors floating around because they're filming whatever they're filming. All that was cool, but me as a baseball player, because I've never been a starstruck person, it's like, oh yeah, that's the woman from Weeds, or that's this person from this, you know. But being a ball player and being able to field ground balls in Oakland Coliseum, making plays, taking batting practice, seeing live pitching, and then on top of that, having thousands of people watching you do it because you have real fans in the stadium. They didn't put cardboard boxes up there. Those are real people. So they're watching you do all this, and it's just, yeah, you really, that was That was phenomenal. That was the biggest aspect about it that I was just like, man, this is awesome.
Did that make you feel like when you were going through that experience? Because I like what you said, like, man, I didn't have to act. I just had to be a ball player. That's what I was. Did you feel more like Melvin the ball player or Melvin the actor during those moments in Oakland?
It's a combination because in one game I had to strike out, so I wasn't feeling like Melvin, the basketball player at that moment, trying to strike out. So because Ray
So
Durham
what was that?
struck
I'm going to pause you there for a second. I love this. So the script called for you to strike out.
Yes,
It has to look authentic. And
yes.
so did you like essentially have to like strike out in real life, or did you throw it and miss the ball intentionally?
I had to strike out a real so I had to the pitcher was actually pitching to me, so I had to purposely try to miss this pitch and make it look real. And I'm an old school baseball player. I hate striking out with the fire of 10 suns. I'm not in this new age, oh, if you strike out 120 times, it's okay. No, it's not. Because for me, it's like you didn't put your team in a position to be successful. You got to put the ball in play. Yes, you can swing out of your shoes for the first two strikes, but when you get two strikes on you, put the ball in play. At least give them a chance. Swallow your pride a little bit instead of trying to swing for the fence with when you're 0 and 2. But anyway, so I hate striking out, and I had to do it like 3 or 4 different takes, purposely missing these pitches. And yeah, it was not a nice feeling.
I believe it. And so when you were doing that and when you got onto that set for the first time, who are the folks that started to really make you feel comfortable? Was it like were there like crew members that were like helping you acclimate to the setting? Were there casts or were the other baseball players there? What made you feel comfortable to be in this really different scenario?
No, you pretty much had to do your job. Nobody's really it's a business, and it's who knows how much money it takes to make that film, but it's a lot. We all know that. So yeah, it's about doing your work. Nobody's there to baby you. It's just like, okay, this is what you're gonna do. Action, do
Make it
it.
happen. Make it
Make it
happen.
happen. So yeah, no, there was nobody coddling you saying, okay, this is what's
I
gonna
guess that's why they hired you in the first place, right? That's what all those that process was to make sure that you were going to be ready for that. So let's talk about. I mean, this is a star-studded cast. We've got the late Philip Seymour Hoffman was in it.
Mhm,
We got Jonah Hill. Excellent, excellent job acting in that film.
mhm,
We've got Lake Stevens, north of Seattle. Chris Pratt. We have Chris Pratt in it. And then we've got Brad Pitt, of course, Billy Bean, the main actor in that film. What was it like meeting those guys? Did you have any memorable conversations with them? And maybe we'll start with good old Oklahoma's own Brad Pitt. What was it like meeting him, and what was your time with him like?
I mean, with the other guys you mentioned, or mostly the other guys you mentioned, since they were playing either players or coaches or, people that were around us more, we were around them much more than Brad Pitt. Most of Brad Pitt's scenes were away from us because it was front office stuff and things like that. But did meet him once. Man, he was a super nice, of course, it goes without saying there's some actors that kinda have their nose up in the air, make you feel like they're superior to you because 'cause they're sitting under stacks of money or whatever. Brad was far from that, like, he actually was on the front step of the dugout and personally shook every one of our hands as we walked by him and said, "Hey, I'm Brad, nice to meet you. Hey, I'm Brad, nice to meet you." We're kinda chuckling like, "Hey, my God, we know who you are, but appreciate you." But nah, he was super humble and a super chill guy. So that was really cool to see that somebody of that status can actually still be humble and chill and, go out of his way of introducing himself to even the special talent actors is basically what our title was.
He really went out of his way there. I mean, that's probably indicative of his hometown roots. So
Mm.
he's from a small town in Oklahoma. And, Brad Pitt also is sadly famous for having his own personal struggles where he's had some relational issues and his own heartache in his life. And so who knows, Melvin, how you were hitting Brad Pitt at that time. Maybe he was real soft hearted because he was himself struggling on a personal level with things that you didn't even know about, right?
Yeah, yeah, maybe. I mean, Angelina Jolie was walking the premises quite a bit, so we got to. She didn't really speak, but we encountered her as well, and yeah, it's cool.
So going down the line, how about Jonah Hill? You got to spend, of course, more time with him. You already talked a
Mhm.
little bit about an interaction with him. What was it like working on set with Jonah?
Jonah was the biggest shock to me, to be honest, because, and I'm sure we'll chat about Chris Pratt, but Chris Pratt is Chris Pratt. Philip Seymour Hoffman, super chill, but had a Philip Seymour Hoffman vibe about him, what you would expect him to be.
Yeah, that's right.
Jonah shocked me because what I knew about Jonah was like super bad Jonah and all these, these films where he's just this super funny, super like kind of crazy vibe kind of character, and that's what I just knew he would come off as. But off camera, it was the polar opposite. He was super quiet, you know, introverted actually. Like he would eat lunch with us. He would sit right next to me and he'd be eating lunch with the baseball players and he would just be kind of quiet, kind of introverted. And then it's like whenever the camera was on, he'd flip a switch. And now he's this whatever you needed him to be. Like I just remember one time, man, I thought old boy was about to get fired. I was like, man, you done messed up. Jonah was preparing for a scene and he was like he had a baseball bat and he was just like hitting the chair like hard, like he like out of frustration because something went wrong. And it was in between scenes, so they weren't filming yet. He was just hitting it hard. And then one of the baseball players, one of the extras, just walked by and said, "Yeah, you hit that chair." And he just stared at him with the straightest look, and he was like, "I'm trying to focus." It's like, woo. I'm like, "You in trouble. I'm gonna be over here." He was just like he was really getting into character, and he was just like, "Yeah, don't mess with me. I'm locked in right now." But I saw that. I just saw how he just flipped the switch, and he was just whatever you needed him to be. So he was like the classic, you know, we're in scene now. I need to be this. When we're not in scene, I'm actually this. And he had the biggest kind of discrepancy between who he was on camera and who he was off camera. It was really interesting to see.
Yeah, that sounds like a real, really a talented actor being able to kind of take on those
Yeah.
personas. I bet Jonah Hill honestly was a bit frustrated and also probably envied at this point in his career, mentioning him again, Jim Carrey. So if you remember, Jim Carrey was in all those really silly films like Dumb and Dumber, like I shared before, the Pet Detective film, or The Mask, or Cable Guy. These are
Mhm.
ridiculous films. And then he's like in movies like Man on the Moon and Truman Show. And these are
Mhm.
thoughtful films that require a lot of solid dramatic acting. And so Jonah Hill's probably thinking as well, like, I'm going to get typecast as this pot smoking fool. And
Mhm.
I actually have some depth to me as an actor, and I want to show that. So when you were seeing that, Melvin, you were seeing this dramatic actor for the first time that the whole world hadn't seen. It's like seeing Jim Carrey in The Man on the Moon or in Truman Show acting and thinking like, why isn't this guy just contorting himself and making jokes the entire time? And that's because he was pivoting to doing dramatic roles as well too. So you saw that for the first time because I remember seeing the film thinking like, man, this doesn't seem like him at all, but he's crushing
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, for sure. And I heard that that's the reason why they had to change his name in the movie because the guy that he was portraying didn't want to be represented by Superbad Jonah. So that's why his name was not the actual name of the guy. but they modified it a little bit because he didn't want to be represented by super bad Jonah Hill. But no, he
Which
did a
is
great job.
totally understandable. But in
Yeah.
hindsight, if he saw what the performance was going to be like, he'd go, man, that's me.
Yeah.
He was me.
Yeah.
So how about Philip Seymour Hoffman? He's of course he passed away tragically. I think he died of an overdose. Is that right? I think something like that.
Yeah, I
What
can't recall. But yeah.
what was that like working with him? Great,
He was super. Yeah, he was super
phenomenal
chill.
actor.
Yeah, phenomenal. But he was super chill. It's pretty much the vibe that he portrayed on camera as the manager of the Oakland A's was literally the vibe he had off. He was just, I mean, besides the fact that he was fighting with Billy Bean, but the what he portrayed to his players in the movie, that's pretty much spot on who he was off camera, just chill, relatable. I mean, wasn't too chatty, but he would chat a bit if you chatted with him and everything. He tried to be as sociable as he could be in that situation. I mean, but no, he was chill. He was a good guy as well.
That's great. And now let's pivot to my main man, Chris Pratt. Love,
Yeah.
love me the Chris Pratt. What a guy. Tell me a little bit about working with Chris. And then Chris is versatile as well. And for folks who haven't seen it, Brad Pitt plays a former player, and you see Brad Pitt practicing here and there as a baseball player. But Chris Pratt has to be playing a ball player, right? And
Hmm.
so he's a baseball player in this film. So what was it like working with Chris? What was he like?
Chris was my guy. Like me and Chris had the funnest time on set. Like I said, like Entertainment Tonight, they were doing, I'm pretty sure it was ET Entertainment Tonight. They would do like behind the scenes stuff and they would always catch I caught it later on, like they actually aired it on TV or whatever. And then it would just show me and him just doing goofy stuff on the field. We would take batting practice together. I tried to help him a little bit as I could, even though he was an actor. So, he was, I don't know if he was exactly new to the game, but you could tell he needed work, to make that scene look realistic. But no, Chris was what you see, the goofiness in film and things like that, same guy off camera. I hit it off with him more than any of the other, we'll call it main actors. Like we actually had, you know, good times off camera, on camera, things like that. Like, yeah, it was fun.
He was I think this is post or during Parks and Rec, which was a NBC
Yep.
sitcom. So he was on that. And I think this is pre Star Lord
Yep.
and pre Jurassic Park and all those other roles that really made him famous. So you were seeing him in his first really foray into Hollywood, big silver screen movie acting, right?
Yeah, 100%. Like all those movies you mentioned, Guardians of the Galaxy, all that came after the fact. So yeah, this was still kind of early in his career, I guess. I mean, I don't know what films he might have done that weren't as mainstream, but yeah, no, he was super, super great guy. Like we had good times.
So Melvin, what was it like seeing Chris and his acting take off post Moneyball? Were you encouraged for him because you knew like this is a solid guy and this is a lovable guy and you love seeing him take off like that? Did you feel kind of connected with him when he was taking off because he's had quite the career.
Yeah, for sure. No, I was definitely happy for him because again, like you alluded to, he's just a great guy. He was just super chill, super fun loving, goofy, just full of life, full of energy. So yeah, it was nice to see that he continued to get more and more opportunities after that because you do like to see people who are genuinely kind and lighthearted people get those opportunities. So I was definitely happy for him.
Melvin, what about this? So I know that you're a man of faith. I know that Chris Pratt is a man of faith. Were you guys able to talk about your faith together at all when you were on set?
Surprisingly, no. I didn't realize that he was a devout Christian until I think he was receiving an award. I don't know if it was an Oscar or something else, but he was receiving something, and he gave all glory to God, and I thought that was really awesome to see. So yeah, I personally didn't know that, but then when you see how he interacted with me, when you see how he interacted with others, then it doesn't become a surprise because that's who Christ calls us to be. We're not supposed to, scripture says that those who exalt themselves will be humbled and those who humble themselves will be exalted. So people that exalt themselves and look down on people, you know, tend to don't pan out as much as people who show that humility and show that love and care for others. And that's who he was. You could tell that's who he was at heart, somebody that was lighthearted, that didn't care that he was making millions while other people might not be making that as much, the special talent actors or whatever. He still treated everybody with that kind of love and respect. So when I look back on it, I'm not surprised because that's just kind of the light that we should be portraying in Christ.
Yeah, that's a good word. My wife, I told you she's British, and there's a show called The Great British Baking Show or Bake Show or something like that. And it's something that we watch annually together. And the lady that just won it is born again Christian young lady studying to be a doctor, and she's in her 20s. And I'm watching the show, and she's just like Chris Pratt when you were spending time with him. She's not honestly mentioning her faith, but I'm watching the show and I'm like whispering to my wife during it, like, this lady's got to be born again. Like, there is no other option. And I was just telling my wife, just like you were saying, Melvin, she was exhibiting like every gift of the Spirit. And I was like, you cannot
Mhm.
conjure this up. You cannot be this sincerely kind and focused in on others and their well being and just do this all on your own. I've never seen it happen. This is like the gift of the Spirit operating in this woman. And so I just watched
Mhm.
the whole thing. She actually won it, which was great to see in the
That's
end.
awesome.
And I Wikipedia'd her at the end, and she is like full on like involved in her church and a lovely young Christian lady. And so it's just kind of like Chris Pratt when you found out, and I think it was like a Nickelodeon or a MTV, something for kids that he was giving an announcement on or accepting an award on when he shared his testimony. When you heard that, you're probably like, this all makes sense.
Yeah.
That's why this guy's operating on a totally different level, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
So, thinking about Chris Pratt or maybe even Brad Pitt, were there moments when the actors asked you for any baseball tips or insights at all, Melvin? Because these guys are great actors. I mean, not being rude to you, Melvin, but they're better actors than you or me. This is what they do for a living. But you're a
Yeah,
better
yeah.
baseball player than they are. And so,
Yeah.
did they ever ask for any tips or insights from you?
Yeah, Chris did. And that's why we would be on the field. Like we'd be on Oakland Coliseum in between sets. And then he'll have like a real baseball bat, but I might have had a wiffle ball or something, and I'd be tossing it to him and he would just be getting his swings in. And then I might share something to tweak or something like that. So yeah, a bit.
Nice one. Nice one. So they were pretty teachable guys when it came to, I mean, it was probably a part of the craft, part of the acting that they wanted to be able to be portrayed as real ball players out there as well. And Chris's role is great in that because if you remember, he's like kind of, some would say, washed up. He doesn't think he really has a future anymore. And then Billy Bean goes and meets with him and his family, and he gets this new wave of opportunity. And so you get to see him really break out in that role in that film.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, how about for you, Melvin? How many times would you say you've seen Moneyball now? How many times have you seen that film?
Phew. Uh, I've probably watched it beginning to end maybe 4 or 5 times, I would say.
So about the same
I
amount
used to
as
always yeah, I used to just joke around that I'm making myself money, so I watch it to make myself money. Every time
I've
I
got
watch it,
friends.
I get a little, get a little
Little
cut.
cut.
So I'm just like, I'm just gonna watch it. Just keep watch. Just put it on repeat. Let it keep
Yeah.
flowing in.
I
Nah,
I
yeah, I would say maybe 4 or 5 times.
4 or 5 times. Yeah, I've got friends who are musicians, and I'll like play their music on iTunes, just like you're talking about, just to give them a little extra cash
Exactly.
as it's playing. So I totally get that. Did you get to do anything special when it premiered, or were you back in the baseball world? What was that like for that
I
film to premiere?
Yeah, I was in the baseball world. I talked to some guys that was at the premiere, like Stephen Bishop, who played David Justice. As you know, Bish has done a lot of things in the acting world now too, and had a lot of big time roles in TV shows and things like that. But he was just kind of telling me, yeah, Melvin, you got a lot of FaceTime and things like that. But I was playing baseball somewhere. I don't even remember when the premiere was, but I was somewhere in the world.
How long, Melvin, did it take for you to finally see Moneyball? Like, was it out in the theaters for like a week or two before you were able to see the film?
To be honest with you, I don't even know if I did see it in the theaters. I'm kind of blanking on it, but actually, I
Melvin,
might.
Melvin,
No,
you're the if that's true, you're the most laid back guy I've ever met in my life.
yeah,
I'd be like,
I don't. I
if I was
really
in
don't.
Austria, if I was in Austria, I'd be like, guys, I'm flying to London to go watch it in England. Right?
Yeah, nah. Honestly, I might have saw it when it streamed it somehow. I don't know. I honestly don't think I went to the movie theater to watch it, to be honest with you, because I was somewhere in the country or in the world. And I seriously doubt they're planning in their movie theater at the time. So yeah, I might have just like streamed it somehow after the fact.
Do the ball players that you're coaching and that you're mentoring in Austria, do many of them know that you were in Moneyball?
They all know.
Yeah.
Somehow people find out. I do not share it. I really don't. It's just people find out once they hit a Google search. Like matter of fact, when you Google search my name in Austria, the fact that I was in Moneyball comes up before any baseball stuff. Like it'll put actor next to my name. Like,
How do you
but
feel about that?
I don't care. I mean, at first I was just like, I am actually a real baseball player, right? But then I'm just like, whatever. I remember playing in Prague Baseball Week, so that's one of the biggest international tournaments in Europe every year, where national teams come to play in it to kind of prep for the European Championships or whatever else they have going on. And I played in Prague Baseball Week in 2015. I got invited because I was playing for Austria or in that Austrian club. And then I went there, and the first game I go 4 for 4. And then they do a write up about it on the website and on social media and things. And it says, Moneyball Melvin Perdue goes 4 for 4. No clue how they found out about Moneyball. Never said a word. No clue. Had no idea. But that is literally what they put in my name. Moneyball Melvin Perdue goes 4 for 4. I'm just like, okay. So, I mean, just people find out. I don't know.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, it's really cool to be a part of not just a baseball film, but a baseball film that's really beloved, right? It's
Yeah,
like it's not like it
absolutely.
was when you're making something like you're making Moneyball and you see all these famous actors, you're probably thinking, okay, this is gonna be something. But when you're actually making a film, you're in the middle of it and you're being directed, and you don't know what you got until the thing is edited and it's
Yeah.
shown up on the big screen. At that point, you realize we've got something here. But when you're in the middle of it, you're like, is this going to flop? Is this going to be phenomenal? Is this going to win an
Yeah.
Oscar? Is this going to get panned? You don't know. You just don't
Yeah,
know.
100%, 100%. Like, and I just kind of remembered something because again, I wasn't following some of this stuff. They actually used one of my shots in the Oscars. So it was like, I remember because I was coming back home from playing golf. It was over the winter. I was coming home from playing golf, and all of a sudden my phone is just blowing up. Even with people I hadn't even heard of since college or high school, just blowing up. And then finally I look at one and it's like, Melvin, am I tripping or did I just see you on the Oscars? And I'm like, what? And then my mom calls me and she's like, Melvin, they used one of your scenes in the Oscar. I'm like, cool. But I had no idea, you know what I mean? But I'm just so grateful that, God provided me with that opportunity to do something, that phenomenal and just, impactful. And just to get to experience that because, yeah, I didn't make it to Major League Baseball as a player, but to just even have, like, again, I have that opportunity to be in Oakland Coliseum for a week, to be practicing where the big boys practice, to be able to play baseball in that environment. And even like all the guys, most people don't know this, but all the guys that got casted as Oakland A's in that movie were either former or current professional players or high level college players. And I was like one of the youngest casted in that movie. Like there was one, we were sitting in between scenes one time and this is how detail oriented they are. They actually put a magazine on the table that was like the draft picks from that year when the movie was actually being portrayed, whatever year that was being portrayed. They put a magazine down with the draft picks of that year. And you had all these guys in the room that were casted as Oakland A's. They're like, here's my name. I got drafted this round. Here's my name. I got drafted this round. Here's my name. So many of them got drafted that year into minor league baseball or were currently playing minor league baseball when that happened. So it was just such a phenomenal experience, just soaking up the knowledge, because obviously my professional career really took off after that as a player, because I was just coming off my first contract when I signed to be in the movie. And then after that is when I had my elongated career. So just soaking up wisdom from people like Royce Clayton, where we would be in the hitting tunnel and he was working with me, or the head baseball coach from USC at the time, where we're taking batting practice on the field and, he's pouring into me a little bit. Stuff like that really actually helped me elevate my career as a player moving forward.
Love it. That's great. That's really helpful to know that in your story where Moneyball fit, and that was at really the beginning of it. That's great. So, Melvin, as we start to wrap this up, across all the leagues and the many countries that you played in, multiple continents, really, what's the single biggest lesson baseball has taught you? Now, that's a tough question, but what would you say it is?
Perseverance, because growing up, especially when I was in high school, I can't name one person that would have thought I would play professional baseball. You can argue a couple might have thought I had a shot at college ball, but not one person that would have thought I would actually played professional, let alone the elongated career that I had, because I was undersized. Somebody might have thought I wasn't big enough, fast enough, strong enough, whatever. But I knew that I served a God that had no limits. And if he put this on my heart, I was going to pursue it and I wasn't going to let anybody stop me. So it's just perseverance, just understanding that people don't control your destiny, God. So people will tell you what you can't do, what you can't become, because they don't see it, but that doesn't mean that God doesn't see it. So, you just have to not allow people to change the trajectory that you feel that God has put you on, and understand that there's always going to be people that hate. There's always going to be people that tell you what you can't do. There's always going to be people that just don't like you, and they might not even have a logical reason for not liking you. They just don't like you because they don't like where you're going, who you are, maybe even what you look like, whatever. And it's not easy, but you just have to do your best to block out the noise and keep pushing it forward. Yeah, and then just understand that, we serve a God with no limits.
Love it. And to parlay that question to the next generation, what is one piece of advice you'd give to a young player that is also dreaming of a pro career like you were?
Don't stop. I mean, you got to have confidence in yourself. You got to have faith, but you also got to have confidence in yourself, and you also got to put in the work. I mean, me as an athletic director and a coach now, one thing I see a lot with this generation is many people say they want to be, or kids say they want to be successful, but they don't understand the hard work it takes to get there. People try to find shortcuts. There's really no shortcuts. You have to put in the work. If you are not working hard, your competition is working hard. But if you do put in that work and you do persevere and overcome the difficulties that are bound to come and not let it deter you or, hinder you from being successful, but push past them, it's always darkest just before it's light. So sometimes when we go through these difficult situations, that's God preparing us for what he has next. So you just keep grinding, you keep working hard and keep having faith that with that work, you can achieve that if you put forth the effort. So don't let people stop you, but also don't let you stop you. You do the work and then you'll see the results.
It's a good word. That's a good word for anyone inside or outside of baseball. That is reality in life, right?
100%. 100%.
So, Melvin, going really past the diamond, beyond the diamond, you've also coached and developed youth players.
Mhm.
And what really drives your passion to do that? That's a lot of work.
Just to want to be impactful. I mean, we live in a dark world now, and we got so many everything you turn. That's why you almost got to look at social media and everything in moderation at this point because everything there's so much negativity out there, so much division, and these kids, a lot of the things that these kids listen to and they put their stock in are influencers that are not necessarily leading them in a positive direction. So I really use it as a platform to try to build strong, independent young men and women who will be impactful in this world. That's near and dear to my heart. That's where I feel that God has placed me on this earth to do, you know, beyond baseball, and even when I was traveling with baseball, I still tried to keep the main focus in mind, which is to be that positive influence. So that's the reason why I do what I do. I just really inspired to be a positive influence to the generation to come. So hopefully we can start to turn the tide on all this negativity and darkness that surrounds us.
What does that look like where you're at now at the school that you're teaching at? What does your job look like day to day there?
Well, we have a school that has kids from 60 different nations. So if you impact these kids the right way and pour into them the right way, that's 60 nations that could be positively influenced by what we're doing. So yeah, I mean, even though as an athletic director, I do a lot of logistical stuff too. I also coach two teams here. And then I like being on the ground floor and interacting with the students because that's how you can create those changes, and hopefully make a difference.
Great answer. I love it. Melvin, how would you say, from your perspective, because you've got a really unique perspective because you are an international ball player. How do you
Mhm.
see the game evolving internationally over the next few decades? I mean, arguably the best baseball player living right now is Japanese.
Mhm.
And it's it you know you look at baseball from an American perspective, and we've got folks all over Latin America and Asia, Canadians playing the
Mhm.
game. But how do you see it evolving internationally over the next decade?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely growing, and I get a front row seat of that being outside of America. Even countries like the Czech Republic and Germany are starting to close the gap with the Netherlands, for example. Spain is getting better, and these are just European countries we're talking about because obviously we all know about Japan. Japan, unless something's changed within the last month, is actually ranked higher than America on the World Baseball rankings right now. Most people don't know that. The Chinese Taipei is catching up. So the rest of the world is catching up because, I mean, the game is growing worldwide. Kids and ball players in those countries are getting hungrier. So yeah, I think it's just becoming much more of a worldwide game, which is a blessing to see. And I also think that's why I love the World Baseball Classic because it really, brings the world together, but it also expands the sport to the rest of the world because it gives it more influence in these countries that might have not picked up the game otherwise. So it's definitely expanding. So, Americans better stay with the times and keep grinding because people are coming for us.
That's so true. And as we're seeing in the NFL, I think they just played in Spain. They played in Berlin earlier. They play in London quite a bit. They're playing in Mexico City. These are American teams that are exporting out into these other countries. So NFL is getting more popular. Basketball, of course, under Stern just totally changed. And there's so many, Eastern European countries that are phenomenal at basketball now that are bringing lots of players in. China as well, right?
Yeah, like you got to think about, what was it, the last draft, I want to say? What was it? 4 out of 10 of the top 10 picks were from France or something. Yeah, something
That's
like
right.
that. It was crazy. And I mean, I'm here in Europe, so obviously I see that firsthand that, there's some guys out here that can absolutely play the game of basketball. I'm a varsity basketball coach here on our campus. We're about to get started, and my roster probably has 10 different countries on it, and we got kids that can absolutely play. Like, yeah, like one of my graduates was all conference since his freshman year. He's a kid from Fiji and just a menace on defense, just like Draymond Green, but not getting technicals. So it's like, yeah, the world is catching up with that too, for sure. So I think, yeah, people got to keep grinding,
Who
get back to
knows?
that grinding mentality. Yeah, sure.
Who knows? One of your students might be the next Greek freak, right?
Well, I don't know about that, but well, you never know, I guess. Like I have one kid, he played for me in 8th grade and he signed in Spain. So he's currently in Spain right now, little guard, and that boy can play. So, I think he might make some noise in a few years. We'll see.
Awesome.
Mhm.
So, Melvin, are there any personal projects or goals you're working on now that excites you?
Just right now, just mainly just getting trying to get the U15 Austrian national team ready to go because that group needs to qualify for the European Championship. So we got the qualifiers going. So the biggest thing with me and that is just making sure that we do everything we can to be objective and get the very best team we can get out of Austria. Making sure the country and the organization and all the clubs feel that there's no biases, that we are really tapping into every part of the country, and that they got coaches that are going to do things the right way and hopefully put together a continued solid foundation that will continue to help elevate Austrian baseball in years to come.
Good word. Okay, we're closing this thing down. Anything else, Melvin, you'd like to share before we wrap this up?
No, man, I just thank you for having me on, and just hopefully that some of the things we talked about will be a positive influence and inspiration to somebody out there.
Yeah. And folks that don't know this, it's like past 7 o'clock at night. So there's a 9 hour difference between the West Coast of the US and Austria.
Yeah.
So Melvin, you're
So I got my coffee.
yeah, that's right. You're an absolute trooper for staying on with me this long. And
All
so I just
good,
really
man.
appreciate you. Just really enjoyed our conversation. Not surprisingly, some of my favorite parts didn't have anything to do with Moneyball at all. You're just a great guy and just really love the testimony and the work that you're doing. So super thankful for you.
I appreciate it, man.
Thanks for being on the show, Melvin. Appreciate you.
Thank you. All the best.
That's a wrap on the Wide Lens podcast. If today's episode broadened your view of history, please follow, rate, and review us. It makes a real difference. A heartfelt thanks to our guests for their story and to Sergei Shadrin for providing the music. Know someone who's witnessed a pivotal moment? Drop us a line at ideas@widelenspodcast.com. Their story could be next. Until next time, keep looking at history through the wide lens.